Okay, in this video we're going to continue with section 5.3. I'll just put that up here. So we're going to do number 35. And 35 says sine of 2x cosine of x equals cosine of 2x sine of x, and it asks us to solve it. So remember, when we were solving, if there was more than one term that had trig in it, we wanted to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract this cosine 2x sine of x to the other side. And we get sine of 2x cosine of x minus cosine of 2x sine of x is equal to 0. And this formula is a sine of u minus v, right? If 2x is u and x is v, and I would get sine u cosine v minus cosine u sine v. So this is the same as sine of u minus v, 2x minus x, is equal to 0. But 2x minus x is just x, so sine of x is equal to 0. And we know when sine of x is equal to 0, so x is equal to 0, pi, 2 pi, depending on if it asked us to solve for all. Let me just see if this asked us to solve for all. It says solve the equation exactly. And so we know that that would be plus n times pi. Okay, the next problem that we have is 2 more proofs we're going to do. And so the first proof says prove tan of pi over 2 minus u is equal to cotangent of u. And so I'm going to do this as a sine and cosine. So we're going to say sine of pi over 2 minus u over cosine of pi over 2 minus u, because that's what tan is, and we're trying to prove that that equals cotangent. And then we'll expand these out using their identities. So sine of pi over 2 cosine u minus cosine of pi over 2 sine of u over cosine of pi over 2 minus u, so that becomes cosine pi over 2 cosine u plus sine of pi over 2 sine of u, and cosine of pi over 2 is 0, and so this becomes 0, and this becomes 0, and sine of pi over 2 is 1, so we get 1 cosine u over 1 sine u, and that equals cotangent u, and that proof is done. Okay, we're going to prove the next one. Prove that cotangent of pi over 2 minus u is equal to tan of u. So we're going to do the same thing, except cotangent is cosine over sine. So we're going to rewrite cotangent as cosine over sine with the same thing in the brackets. And then we're going to expand those out. So we have cosine of pi over 2 cosine of u plus sine of pi over 2 sine of u divided by sine of pi over 2 minus u becomes sine of pi over 2 cosine of u minus cosine of pi over 2 sine of u, and cosine of pi over 2 is 0, so this term becomes 0 and this term becomes 0. Sine of pi over 2 is 1, so we get sine of u over cosine of u, and that equals tan of u, and that's what we were trying to prove. So we're going to bring our tan of u all the way down on the right side of our equals. Okay, and those are done, and tune into the next video to look at the combining sinusoids.